The wind that slides along the Talas River smells of juniper, resin, and fresh blood, as if the Silk Road itself has opened a vein. On one bank, Thames banners ripple like dragon scales, vermilion silk stitched with the thundercloud motifs of Emperor Xuanzong, and whisper mantras that promise reincarnation among ancestors. If today, arrows fly true. Armored horse archers from the Yangtze Protectorate tighten saddle straps across the water. Black and green standards of the Abbasid Caliphate rise over a mosaic of warriors. Syrians and Khurasani infantry wrapped in quilted cotton, and lean-cheeked scouts from Bukhara who carried curved daggers dipped in walnut dye for stealth. Casting strobes across crates marked with strange seals. Somewhere between these campfires, a third army lurks. Karluk Turks who have sworn allegiance to both sides and neither, calculating where profit outweighs honor. Another, the Kufic stamp for sugar. Lanterns sway on suspension bridges of camel leather. One bears the stylized cloud of a Chang'an guild. Still another, the sigil of a Sogdian smuggler, known only as fuck. Inside those crates rest objects worth more than jade or silver. As though its course knows the scrolls of history will soon curve in a new direction. Bundles of mulberry bark pulp and bamboo screens. The guarded secret of Chinese papermaking, Western historians will later claim, changed the trajectory of civilization. Tonight, that secret hangs in balance with lives of 30,000 men. And the river seems to pulse with anticipation. Listen closer. Mingled with the clang of whetstones and the grunt of pack animals, you can almost hear the susurrus of spies passing coded phrases that sound like polite greetings. Sogdian merchants funnel Persian silver and Roman glass into Chang'anese pleasure districts, each syllable heavy enough to buy or betray an empire. Long before the first sword hisses from its scabbard at Talas, the clash has been fermenting in caravansaries, and smoke-filled teahouses where maps are drawn on silk but deals on parchment. The Tang Dynasty, a pest predator of East Asia, views Central Asia less as a frontier than as its pantry. The Tarim Basin oases provide jade, salt, and tribute horses. Meanwhile, the Abbasid Revolution has recently toppled the shifting Islam's political axis from Damascus to Baghdad, and focusing new caliphal ambition on the lucrative arteries of the Silk Road, whose half-hearted rebellion ends with his arrest and execution in Between these giants lies the Fergana Valley, a riddle of fertile soil, fractious to Baghdad pleading for aid against the dragon banners that smother merchants' freedom like desert sand over wells, and advertise Abbasid legitimacy along the world's busiest superhighway, and mountain passes tight enough that a single platoon can tax an empire's caravan. Temp's General Gao Xianzhi, born of Goguryeo ancestry and tempered by campaigns against Tibet and Dahi, seizes Fergana ostensibly to rescue a puppet prince ousted by a rival line. His success alarms local warlords who had imagined Chinese garrisons as polite guests, not permanent landlords. Among them sits the ambitious ruler of Tashkent, an act that sends shockwaves through corridor courts from Samarkand. Tashkent's widow dispatches clandestine messengers. Caliph Al-Mansur, still consolidating power after fratricidal intrigue, senses opportunity. Protect Muslim traders, curb Chinese reach. The Abbasids also carry something more potent than gold. Glass vials of saffron-stained ink that he authorizes regional governor Ziyad ibn Salih to mobilize a composite army of Khurasani veterans under the Black Standard, supplemented by ferocious Zanj spearmen and a delegation of Sogdian engineers who promise knowledge of river-crossing machines. But soldiers alone rarely tilt geopolitics. Information does. Within weeks, Chang'an's Ministry of State Security intercepts coded scraps hinting at Abbasid troop movement. Gao Xianzhi, stationed in summons his network of Baizalia. 1. A teenage Sogdian polyglot named rides 90 hours through foothills to deliver intel. Abbasids are courting Karluk tribes with gold diners and a promise of tax-free grazing rights. Gao laughs it off. The Karluks swore vassal oaths to the Son of Heaven after he rescued their Khan from Tibetan captivity. Yet Abbasid adds a final nugget. When poured on parchment, reveal invisible calligraphy, instructing precisely where the Karluks should wheel mid-battle. Gao's smile twitches. Only Tempsei alchemists and Sogdian guilds know that someone has sold the recipe and loyalty with it. The two forces converge along the Talas in early July. Fields of wild wheat sway ember under a hammering sun. Gao positions his mixed Tang Turkic army on the north bank. 1. Temp's heavy infantry in lamellar armor, 5,000 mounted crossbowmen, 4,000 Fergani auxiliaries, and 7,000 Karluk cavalry deployed as forward screen. Across the river, Ziyad ibn Salih arrays, perhaps 20,000 Arab lancers, Khurasani archers, and 1,000 armored Ghulam horse guards whose robes shimmer green in morning light. Both commanders, no rivers can invert advantage. If you control crossings, you dictate tempo. If you fail, you drown twice. Once in water, once in politics. Spies on both sides fan through night camps, measuring morale as if taking pulse. Overhears an Abbasid cleric praying not for victory, but for the safe delivery of the heavenly parchments. One Tim scout, disguised as a date seller. The phrase unsettles him. He wonders if it refers to Quranic scrolls or something altogether darker. Day 1 opens without grandeur. Skirmishers duel with arrows that hiss like bamboo flutes, probing for weak joints in the enemy formation. Abbasid archers fire. Composite bows laminated with ibex horn, outrange intense crossbows, but suffering slower reload. Gaos forward, turrets, wooden towers, mounted on wagons, inch toward riverbank, providing elevated platforms for bolt shooters who pick off Arab engineers attempting to anchor floating bridges. Gift in Gurak, brocade and promises of Changan concubines once the campaign ends. And 2 crates of rare Nubian ivory to Karluk tribal elders. Younger Karluk warriors whisper, Chinese governors tax their livestock and forbid slave raids into Tibetan territory? Rulings that taste like clipped wings. Neither side commits to full engagement. Dust devils spin like wandering spirits over no man's land, while each commander waits for the other to blink. Night falls, and the Talas reflects starlight in rippling constellations, as if the sky itself ponders which banner it prefers. Ziyad, eager to test Temp's discipline, feints an assault at the central ford. Espionage slithers where swords can't. During the dark first watch, a Karluk chieftain named Gorak sneaks into Tem's headquarters with urgent news. His scouts spotted Abbasid emissaries offering 500 pounds of silver. Gao waves away the warning, but political currency isn't always minted in jade. Sometimes it's stamped with tribal grievances, leaving shadow lances jutting like skeletal trees along riverbank, severing stirrup thigh bonds, carrying papermaking samples offered as proof he can broker a truce. Yanking riders onto ground, where infantry daggers finish the work. In secret York councils, Abbasids, conversely, promise desert grazing without tariffs, and quote prophetic traditions, extolling equality among believers. For a nomad seeking prestige, that theology pairs well with fresh silver. Data dons brutal, Arab lancers, Rai-Nituni, into arrow storms, spears leveled. He nods toward Abbasid campfires. Voices echoing Takbir that unsettles conscripted Fergani footmen unused to theological war cries. Gao counters with who-can-pull tactics. Vanguard crossbowmen retreat behind shielded infantry, drawing lancers onto concealed caltrop bets. Hoarse screams mingle with guttural curses as animals founder. Temp's halberdiers surge forward. Casualties are high on both sides, but the Abbasids suffer the psychological blow of failing to crack the chimp shell. Ziyad withdraws at dusk, only his robe remains. That night, the Silk Road's shadow trade hums louder than ever. A Sogdian fixer named Rustam slips through Tep's lines wearing a monk's robe. Gao, suspecting a trap but intrigued, grants audience. Rustam unfurls a sheet so fine you can see torchlight through its fibers. This, he whispers, is worth more than armies. Gao smirks, having seen better in Luzhang workshops. Rustam presses. But what if I give it to them? Gao orders the man detained for interrogation. At dawn, the prisoner's cell stands empty, stitched inside with micro-characters listing bribe accounts tied to unnamed Temps officials. Day 3 turns the tide. Karluk cavalry, assigned to Temp's left flank, forming an arc-pointed not at Abbasids, but back at Temp's lines. Ride out for routine screening, but halt mid. Gao's signal officers, confused, wave banners, demanding identification. Instead, Karluks unleash, volleys into Temps, rear echelons, the signal for betrayal. Abbasid drums pound approval. Erebor surge across temporary pontoon bridges erected overnight, smashing into Temp's ranks caught between river surge and desertion. Gao rallies elite guard units around the triangular war cart, attempting to form a hollow square, but dust and panic sever command chains. Fleeing north where Karluk scouts cut him down for sport. Fergani auxiliaries break first. Temp's crossbowmen expend bolts faster than runners can resupply. Holds ground through afternoon. When pouches empty, they fight with stock butt and helmet spike. Gao himself suffers arrow graze across cheek, red stripe marring Lacard. Yet the Temp Center, built on heavy infantry, drilled in Luyang barracks, spearmen thrust in disciplined rhythm. Ground beneath shields turns same hue, slick with mixed gore. Shield locks clack into continuous wall, chanting ancestral lineages to drown out Fatiha recitations, rising from opposing ranks. Sun sinks, painting sky black. Gao orders retreat in half-moon formation, hoping to regroup beyond a ridge. Within decades, Abbasid paper mills will rise along the Tigris, hacks a narrow corridor along riverbank, crossing at a shallow point under moonlight. They hold high ground, launching javelins into any Temp's unit attempting to climb. As twilight dips, Abbasid Gulams exploit a gap near the Temp's baggage train where paper crates lie stacked beside grain sacks. Flames lick wooden crates, releasing acrid smoke scented faintly of mulberry. A small skirmish blossoms into inferno when arrows ignite spilled sesame oil. Legends will later claim this is the moment Arab soldiers captured Chinese papermakers, who teach the art to catalyzing the spread of knowledge westward. Central Asia's protectorates would have collapsed in a single season. In reality, the captives include low-rank artisans, familiar only with fiber rinsing, yet they are enough, fueling translation movements that rebroadcast Greek science through Arabic lent, and most painful to a general steeped in Confucian order, with night fully fallen. But the Karluk betrayal has severed his escape corridor. Abbasid archers now control river ford. Retreat devolves into rout. Go aided by remnant cavalry and the loyal eunuch advisor Li Sai. Less than 40% of Temp's force escapes. Gao's political enemies in Chang'an will later accuse him of recklessness. But imperial censors quietly note that without his stubborn rearguard, fewer than 7,000 Temp's regulars remain. And in the Kharas tunnels beneath the bazaar, Gao Xianzhi's battered column stumbles eastward into the twilight of the Pamir foot. Every mile a ledger entry of what the Temps have lost. Supply wagons burned, banners torn to ribbons. The certainty that out on the grasslands, loyalty now trades at market rate. Rearguard skirmishes haunt the retreat. Karluk pursuers blow bone whistles whose shrill notes bounce off granite cliffs, signaling for ambushes that slash the Temp's line like shears through silk before melting into darkness. Arguing that heaven never intended China's civilizing virtue to extend into the far barbarian West Pascan, Gao responds with fighting withdrawals, using portable palisades of interlocked shields to create momentary redoubts where wounded men can scramble ahead. Each dawn reveals fewer, leaner ranks. In one canyon pass, soldiers resort to stuffing arrow wounds with shredded scrolls. Official petitions stamped with the imperial seal because linen bandages are gone. The irony is not lost on the scholar officers. The bureaucracy that recorded their triumphs now absorbs their blood. By the time Gao reaches the stone towers of Kashgar, local governors, wary of displaying weakness, stage ceremonial parades, trumpets, drums, dancers stew, welcome their hero home. Ziyad nods. Behind closed palace doors, however, merchants whispered that the dragon's claws have dulled. Tibetan envoys in turquoise inlaid helmets arrive the very week of Gao's return. The ink dries faster than anyone expects, leaving crisp strokes, bearing gifts of yak butter and obscure poetry, but really scouting for chances to peel oasis states from Tempsan influence. Sogdian traders already gamble diners on how quickly Samarkand's garrison will levy new tariffs on silk caravans rerouted through the Oxus. News travels even faster than bitterness. When the court at Chang'an receives Gao's memorial written in terse brushstrokes that confess misjudgment of tribal fidelity, yet highlight the extraordinary ferocity of Abbasid archers, Emperor Zhuanzong sets down his jade chopsticks and orders a full audit of Western expenditure. Censors, eager to shield the Son of Heaven from any hint of imperial fragility, spin the setback as the fault of provincial corruption and Karluk perfidy rather than Temp's strategy. Scholars in the Imperial Academy pen essays. They quote the classics to frame retreat as sage restraint, but Gao's enemies led by the eunuch faction already sharpening knives for court, Domlin's bile and accusations. His reckless pursuit of glory, squandered men, treasure, and most daemon secret of paper. Inside the Caliphate, the mood is exultant yet cautious. Ziyad ibn Salih, hero of Talas, enters the marble audience hall in Baghdad where colossal bronze doors still echo the clang of Umayyad defeat. Caliph Omansur, robed in black silk that catches lamplight like a moonless sea, greets him not with gold, but with a question. Is it true that among the captives are artisans who turn pulp into scroll without parchment? The Caliph gestures for a eunuch scribe to produce a thin, cream-colored sheet, unlike the heavy vellum of Quran. They call it coked. The scribe whispers, and it absorbs ink as sand drinks water. An experiment follows. A verse from Surah Al-Q is penned with reed pen. Al-Mansur smiles ear is a medium democratic enough to copy scripture. Contracts and poetry, in volumes, parchment costs would have smothered. He orders the first Beit al-Knaid house of paper constructed on the Tigris floodplain, staffed by Chinese artisans and Persian dye masters who experiment with flax, hemp, and rag composites suitable to Mesopotamian climate. The ripple effects bloom within a generation. Baghdad's libraries swell. Scholars of the Suntarais, Beit Awikma, discover they can commission multiple scribes to transcribe Aristotle, Galen, and freshly translated Sanskrit astronomy treatises at a fraction of vellum cost. Market stalls and booths sell poetry, chapbooks beside figs. Tax accountants in Kufa keep ledgers on portable quires. The bureaucracy's hand multiplies faster than any caliph's horses. Paper-making secrets diffuse westward. By 800 CE, Samarkand boasts 3 mills. By 950, Cairo's Fatimid viziers fund paper quotas for every school and when crusaders later stumble into Levantine bazaar, they will marvel at cheap notebooks, silent dividend from a day of betrayal, beside a river few of them can locate on maps. Meanwhile, on the steppes, political latitude reorients like an iron needle near the Karluks, enriched by Abbasid silver and legitimized by their part in toppling Tang prestige, declare a Yabgu Khanate in. They intensify raids on Turkish and intermittently ally with Tibetan forces, pressuring Chinese guardians at Kucha and Turfan. Silk Road security becomes so precarious that Sogdian merchants start shipping high-value goods via maritime routes through the Straits of Malacca, where shipborne pirates, not horse archers, pose the main hazard. Thus Talas nudges maritime Asia into ascendancy, decades before Zheng. Gao's personal fate intertwines with palace intrigue. Cut rebel supplier ignored. Chanters on Chang'an streets still sing of his earlier victories over Khitan rebels in Tibetan, but eunuch whisper networks portray him as a relic of expansionist hubris. When an Aleutian, a semi-Turkic frontier general, mounts his rebellion in 7, Gao is summoned for counsel, but his strategists fortify Luoyang. He will die under house arrest during the revolt's chaos. Of Karluk chieftains kneeling to Islamic truth once they smelled Muslim blood on the wind. Yet folk ballads in Dunhuang caves remember him as Iron Dragon of the Western March, such as crossbow volleys on rotating drum signals, the man who almost bent the Silk Road into permanent Temp's orbit. Abbasid chroniclers, for their part, yet under watchful prefect eyes, tax burdens on peasantry rise, contributing fuel to internal unrest, suspicious that merchants might be spies, enshrine Talas as proof that Allah grants victory to believers even against civilizations. Famed for porcelain and gunpowder fireworks, they write of angels appearing in the battle dust, of Quranic banners fluttering untouched by Tang arrows. There is selective memory. The same texts omit Chinese tactical innovations, or the Temp's practice of field surgeons cauterizing wounds with heated bronze needles, technologies later borrowed quietly via captured manuals and interrogated physicians. In Chang'an's cosmopolitan markets, Sogdian dancers still perform. The Bureau of Barbarians tightens residency permits. Silk Road traffic dwindles, revenues dip. But there is resilience. Papermaking centers in Dunhuang innovate watermark seals to certify tax receipts, while Buddhist monks adapt cheap paper to mass-produce sutra scrolls, democratizing religious texts within China. Even as the West leverages the same medium for science, Talas, it seems, ignites parallel information booms rather than transferring monopoly. Elsewhere, imperial workshops experiment with substances gleaned from Abbasid prisoners. When movable wooden type appears, recipes for indelible blue ink derived from lapis lazuli, dusted with egg white. These innovations feed the eventual song, Dynasty printing. Explosion. It will rely on the paper substrate, whose secret Temp's artisans defended with swords, but ultimately could not keep sealed. Back in Baghdad, a physician named Hunayn ibn Ishaq scribbles marginalia onto fresh white folios, translating Galen into Arabic. Scholars in Cordoba, Esmadnet, El Zarb Library inscribe ownership marks that boast lineage on paper of the victory at Talas. He praises the smoothness of Samarkand sheets, like white dove espressed compared to coarse Egyptian papyrus. In his margins he notes a rumor, the first of these leaves taken from captives of China at River Talas. Even centuries later, the battle becomes watermark for intellectual property. Within decades they convert to Islam, spreading both religious zeal and steppe pragmatism, absorbing Arabic script and adding Turkic phonetics, birthing the first Turkic Quran commentaries. And what of the Quran? Their children ride under folded black banners into When Seljuks later storm Anatolia, they will inherit the Karluk adaptation of Islam, a version not born in Mecca, but mid-switch of allegiance on a dusty Central Asian riverbank. Historians argue about Talas's ranking among decisive battles. Some place it below Gojamela, others note its casualty. Cal pales beside Canny, yet casualty lists seldom correlate with consequence. What Talas proves is that information capture can outweigh territorial gain. A single technology transfer the conversion of pulped fiber into potential. The cultural war between parchment economies and paper economies. Europe will not replicate the technique until the 12th century mills at half a world and 400 years away. By then, Baghdad's scholars will have cataloged star-at-late algebra, treatises, and medical encyclopedias on leaves that owe their ligature to the Karluk betrayal. From the espionage angle, Talas showcases tradecraft ahead of its era. Invisible saffron, inks, double allegiances, ransom for proprietary artisans. Modern intelligence agencies still teach Talos principles, always hedge alliance with incentives. Secure intellectual capital as tightly as fortresses, and trust supply chains over shock assaults. Even the whisper about Foxtail, the Sogdian smuggler, persists in spy folklore. an archetype of the freelance broker who survives regime change by selling essentials to both sides while revealing loyalty to none. The river itself flows on. Indifferent Russian surveyors in the 19th century will misplot its ancient course, causing debates among archaeologists excavating what they think are Talas bones, but turn out to be cattle burial pits from a Mongol encampment. Yet every few summers, nomadic kids fishing for barbel pull up corroded arrowheads, shaped unlike any Mongol design. Local elders nod knowingly tempts. They say, though few can articulate the dynasty, some arrowheads become amulets strung on leather cords. It acquires new meaning just as the battle's strategic lessons will be repurposed by Mongol Tumen commanders and Soviet tank tacticians studying envelopment on open plains, warned by herders who believe they guard against wolf attacks. The artifact's original context lost, which circles us back to the present, and to you, Travella, in the corridors of memory. Auditor of forgotten treachery, you have stood beside Gao's shrinking square, felt Karluk arrows zipping past your ear, ridden with Abbasid lancers across a moonlit ford, and watched smoke from burning crates curl into stars that illuminate future libraries. You have traced how a river skirmish reshaped world literacy and carved new grooves in the Silk Road's cultural phonograph. Show them how ideas and inventions marched in the baggage train. It cost you less than a single arrow, but signals the algorithmic Silk Road to ferry more epic sagas your way. So the question ripens. What secrets in your world and algorithm, a vaccine formula, an energy innovation might shift civilizations if they cross battle lines? So our next expedition, perhaps through the misty rice terraces of Bakhnin, where paper money first circulated, the cratered hills of Kursk, where steel and radio intercepts dance. Talas insists we treat knowledge like wildfire, powerful, illuminating, yet forever poised to escape containment. Mount up and ride with us to the next horizon. If this journey stirred your strategic instincts, it sparked curiosity about how technology and battlefield pivots braid into history's rope gauntlet that spark gutter out, share this story with someone who thinks ancient wars were fought only for land. Smash the like button with the decisiveness of a Temp's crossbow trigger. Subscribe and ring the bell, or the code-ridden alleys of Bletchley Park finds you ready at the riverbank of discovery. Then unsheath your sharpest questions in the comments. Would Temp's expansion have survived if the Karluks stayed loyal? Could Paper's westward spread have been delayed without Talas? We study every note, faster than a Sogdian courier, changing horses at a desert relay. History is a caravan dusted by intrigue.